The day you stop reacting, nobody can control you ever again. Imagine discovering that the people who upset you the most have been using the same invisible weapon against you for years, and you handed it to them without even realizing it. The shocking truth is that your greatest weakness is not your lack of strength, intelligence, or confidence. It is your reaction. The moment someone can predict how you will react, they have already gained power over you. But the day you stop reacting impulsively is the day their power disappears. That music single decision can transform your relationships, your peace of mind, your confidence, and ultimately your entire life. The ancient Stoics understood this secret centuries ago. And once you understand it too, you will never look at conflict the same way again. There was a man named Ethan who worked as a project manager in Chicago. He was intelligent, hardworking, and respected by his team. Yet, one person always seemed capable of ruining his entire day. His supervisor constantly criticized him in front of others, interrupted him during meetings, and questioned every decision he made. Every insult felt personal. Every sarcastic comment stayed in Ethan's mind long after work ended. Even at home, he replayed those conversations over and over again. His wife noticed he smiled less, slept poorly, and carried invisible anger everywhere he went. One evening, after another frustrating day, Ethan visited his grandfather, a quiet man who rarely spoke unless he had something meaningful to say. His grandfather listened carefully without interrupting. When Ethan finally finished, expecting advice about music standing up for himself, the old man simply picked up a small wooden puppet resting on a nearby shelf. He gently pulled one of its strings and the puppet's arm moved immediately. Then he looked at Ethan music and asked, "Who controlled the movement?" Ethan answered, "The person holding the string." Music. His grandfather nodded and quietly placed the puppet back on the table. Then he asked another question. "Every time your supervisor insults you, who pulls your strings?" Ethan froze. For the first time, he realized something painful. His supervisor wasn't controlling his schedule. He wasn't controlling his paycheck. He wasn't controlling his future. He was controlling Ethan's emotions. And Ethan had been allowing it. That conversation became the turning point of Ethan's life. He stopped trying to control his supervisor and started learning to control himself. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. The supervisor continued making sarcastic remarks, but Ethan no longer reacted the same way. He answered calmly. Sometimes he answered briefly. Sometimes he didn't answer at all. The insults slowly lost their effect because they no longer produced the emotional reaction they were designed to create. Eventually, the supervisor stopped trying. It was no longer entertaining. There was no reward. Ethan later admitted that nothing around him had changed. The only thing that changed was what happened inside him, and that changed everything. This is one of the greatest lessons Stoicism offers. Most people believe power comes from controlling other people. The Stoics believed real power comes from becoming impossible to control. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Yet he reminded himself daily that another person's behavior belonged to them, while his response belonged only to him. That distinction music separated free people from emotional prisoners. The moment someone else decides how you feel, your freedom quietly disappears. The moment you reclaim your response, your freedom returns. Before we continue, if you're committed to building an unshakable mind, mastering your emotions, and learning timeless wisdom that strengthens your character every day, subscribe to Stoic Reflections. Every lesson on this channel is created to help you become calmer, stronger, music wiser, and impossible to manipulate. If these teachings inspire you, music, you're exactly where you belong. Most people never realize that emotional reactions are predictable. Manipulative music people study reactions the way skilled chess players study patterns. They discover what makes you angry. They notice what makes you music defensive. They learn which words hurt you most. Then they repeat those behaviors because they know exactly what will happen next. The Stoics' music recognized this long before modern psychology existed. They understood that predictable reactions create predictable control. The less predictable your emotions become, music the less influence others have over your life. Imagine a fisherman lowering bait into the water. The fish bites music because it reacts without thinking. The wiser fish pauses. It observes. It waits. It survives because it does not confuse every opportunity with something it must immediately pursue. Human beings often behave the same way. Someone insults us and we bite immediately. Someone provokes us online and we cannot resist responding. Someone questions our abilities and we rush to defend ourselves. We believe we are protecting our pride, when in reality we are revealing exactly how we can be controlled. Epictetus taught that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they form about those events. Think carefully music about that. An insult is merely sound until your mind gives it meaning. A criticism is merely words until you decide they define your worth. Another person's anger is merely their emotion until you choose to carry it home. The Stoics believe that the space between an event and your response is where your true freedom lies. Once you discover that space, nobody can easily manipulate your emotions. Again, there is another truth that many people spend their entire lives avoiding. Reacting feels powerful in the moment, but it usually leaves you weaker afterward. Anger gives the illusion of strength while quietly stealing your peace. The louder you become, the less clearly you think. The more defensive you become, the more control you surrender. Real strength rarely announces itself. It remains calm while everyone else is losing control. That is why the calmest person in the room often possesses the greatest power. Many people confuse reacting with strength because reacting feels immediate. It feels satisfying for a moment. Someone insults you and you immediately answer with a sharper insult. Someone disrespects you and you raise your voice to prove you will not be treated that way. For a few seconds, your ego celebrates, but later when your emotions settle, something else arrives. Regret. You begin replaying the conversation. You wish you had said less. You wish you had remained calmer. You wish you had protected your dignity instead of your pride. The Stoics understood that the strongest response is usually the one you never have to regret. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that the quality of your life depends upon the quality of your mind. Music think about that. He did not say your happiness depends on other people's behavior. He did not say your peace depends on perfect circumstances. He said it depends upon your own mind. That means every emotional reaction is an opportunity. Every insult becomes a test. Every criticism becomes a choice. Will you allow another person to decide your emotional music state? Or will you remain the guardian of your own thoughts? Imagine standing before a mirror. If the mirror reflected every object that passed in front of it hours after they were gone, it would become impossible to see clearly. Yet, this is exactly how many people live. Someone insults them in the morning and they carry it until bedtime. Someone disappoints them on Monday and they continue reliving it on Friday. Someone speaks negatively about them once and they replay those words hundreds of times. The event lasted only a few seconds. The reaction lasted for days. The Stoics believed that we often multiply our own suffering by refusing to let moments pass naturally. There was a woman named Claire who owned a small bookstore in Seattle. One afternoon, an angry customer stormed into her shop complaining about a damaged book. His voice became louder with every sentence. Other customers stopped browsing and quietly watched the confrontation unfold. Everyone expected Claire to defend herself. Instead, she listened patiently until the man finished speaking. Then she smiled gently and said, "Let's solve the problem together." The man immediately lowered his voice. After replacing the book, he apologized for his behavior before leaving. Later, one employee asked Claire how she stayed so calm. She replied, "His anger belonged to him. My peace belongs to me. I refuse to exchange them." That simple statement captures music, one of the deepest Stoic principles. You do not have to accept every emotional burden someone offers you. Just because another person is angry does not mean you must become angry. Just because another person is anxious does not mean you must become anxious. Just because another person loses control does not mean you must lose yourself. Imagine someone trying to hand you a heavy suitcase. If you never take hold of it, who continues carrying the weight? The person holding it. Music, the same is true of emotional burdens. Not every insult deserves acceptance. Not every argument deserves participation. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Seneca warned that anger music is temporary madness. Think about how accurate that description is. When people become angry, they often say things they do not mean. They damage relationships they later wish they had protected. They make decisions they spend years regretting. Anger music narrows vision. It convinces you that immediate victory is more important than long-term peace. The Stoics practiced delaying their reactions because they knew emotions lose much of their power when given time to settle. Time is often the greatest ally of wisdom. Ask yourself honestly, how many of your biggest regrets came from moments when you reacted too quickly? How many friendships ended because nobody paused long enough to think? How many opportunities disappeared because pride demanded an immediate response? Imagine if every emotional reaction required you to wait one full hour before acting. How many arguments would never happen? How many painful words would remain unspoken? The Stoics believed that patience is not weakness. Patience is disciplined strength. It gives reason enough time to catch up with emotion. There is another reason why reacting gives others power over you. Every emotional outburst reveals your deepest vulnerabilities. The person observing you begins learning exactly which buttons produce the strongest reaction. They notice what makes you defensive. They discover what makes you jealous. They identify what makes you lose confidence. Every reaction becomes information. Manipulative people remember that information and quietly use it again in the future. But when your responses become calm, thoughtful, unmeasured, those same people lose their map. They no longer know how to influence your emotions because you have stopped reacting the way they expect. That is the beginning of true freedom. Imagine trying to start a fire with wet wood. You strike the match again and again, but nothing catches. Eventually, you stop trying because the effort produces no result. Manipulative people often behave the same way. They provoke because they expect music and emotional fire. They criticize because they expect defensiveness. They insult because they expect anger. But when your mind has been trained through Stoic discipline, their words find nothing to ignite. The flame dies before it ever begins. Not because they changed, but because you did. Epictetus taught that no person can truly harm you unless music they damage your character. That idea seems almost unbelievable in today's world. Most people believe harm begins the moment someone speaks badly about them. The Stoics' music believed something completely different. Your reputation belongs to other people. Your character belongs to you. Someone may spread lies about you. They may misunderstand your intentions. They may judge you unfairly. But none of those things can make you music dishonest, cowardly, or cruel unless you willingly abandon your own principles. The greatest protection you possess is not controlling what others say. It is refusing to become someone you would not respect. There was an experienced airline captain named Michael who had flown for nearly 30 years. During one particularly difficult flight, severe turbulence caused panic throughout the cabin. Passengers cried. Some shouted at the flight attendants. Music others assumed the aircraft was about to crash. Yet inside the cockpit, Michael's voice music remained steady. Every instruction he gave was calm, measured, and confident. After landing safely, a young co-pilot asked him, "Weren't you afraid?" Michael smiled gently and answered, "Fear was present. Panic was optional." That answer reflects the heart of Stoicism. You cannot always choose what you feel at first, but you can choose what you do next. Most people believe emotional control means never feeling anger, sadness, disappointment, or fear. The Stoics never taught that. They understood emotions are part of being human. What they taught was something much wiser. Feel the emotion without becoming its servant. Anger may knock on your door, but you do not have to invite it inside to live with you. Fear may visit your thoughts, but it does not deserve the final decision. Every emotion should be acknowledged, examined, and then guided by reason rather than blindly obeyed. Think about the ocean during a storm. On the surface, waves crash violently against one another. But deep beneath those waves, the water remains remarkably calm. The Stoics' music trained themselves to live from that deeper place. They understood that life will always produce storms. People will disappoint you. Friends will betray you. Plans will fail. Criticism will come. Music loss is unavoidable. Yet beneath those temporary waves, there can still exist a mind that remains grounded in wisdom. The deeper your character becomes, the less every surface disturbance affects you. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, war, political corruption, disease, and constant pressure. Yet he repeatedly reminded himself that external events could never force him to abandon virtue. Music, imagine carrying that mindset into your own life. Someone insults you. Instead of immediately reacting, you quietly ask yourself, is my peace worth sacrificing? Music over these words. Someone tries to provoke you. Instead of proving yourself, you simply observe their behavior. Someone misunderstands your intentions. Instead of desperately music explaining yourself, you continue living according to your values. This is not passivity. This is mastery. There is extraordinary confidence in no longer needing everyone to understand you. Many people music exhaust themselves trying to correct every misunderstanding, answer every accusation, and defend every decision. They believe silence means weakness. The Stoics often discovered the opposite. Sometimes silence communicates greater confidence than endless explanation. Imagine a mountain standing beneath dark music clouds. Does the mountain argue with the storm? Does it defend itself against the wind? No. It remains exactly what it is. The storm eventually passes. The mountain remains. Character works the same way. If your integrity is genuine, time becomes your greatest defender. Ask yourself something important. Who has controlled your emotions most over the last year? Was it a difficult coworker, a former partner, a family member, a stranger on the internet? Now imagine how different your life would feel if those same people lost the ability to disturb your inner peace. The Stoics believed that freedom does not begin when difficult people disappear. Freedom begins when their behavior no longer determines your emotional state. That is a kind of strength no one can take from you. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize something that changes everything. Not everyone deserves a reaction. That realization is incredibly liberating. Before that moment, you feel responsible for answering every criticism, correcting every misunderstanding, defending every decision, and proving yourself to anyone who questions your worth. After that moment, something inside you becomes quieter. You begin asking a different question. Will my response improve this situation? If the answer is no, you protect your peace. The Stoics believe that wisdom is not measured by how much you say. It is measured by knowing when silence carries greater strength than words. Seneca once observed that music, the greatest remedy for anger, is delay. That advice remains powerful today. Imagine receiving a message that instantly makes your blood boil. Your fingers begin typing before your mind has finished thinking. How many relationships have been damaged by messages written in moments like that? How many opportunities have disappeared because someone reacted before reflecting? Now imagine waiting until tomorrow, reading the same message with a calmer mind. Very often your response changes completely. Sometimes you answer differently. Sometimes you answer more kindly. Sometimes you realize no answer is necessary at all. Time has an extraordinary ability to separate emotion from wisdom. There was a lawyer named Rebecca working in Boston. She had earned a reputation for remaining remarkably composed during difficult negotiations. Opposing attorneys often tried to provoke her. Some raised their voices. Others interrupted her repeatedly. A few even attempted personal attacks. Yet Rebecca almost never reacted immediately. She would quietly write few notes, pause, and then continue speaking in the same calm tone. One young associate finally asked her, "How do you stay so calm when people are trying to upset you?" Rebecca smiled. "I learned that whoever controls the emotional temperature of the room usually controls the outcome." That lesson reaches far beyond courtrooms. It applies to marriages, friendships, business, leadership, parenting, in every area of life. The calmest person usually sees what everyone else misses. Because panic narrows vision, calmness expands it. The Stoics trained themselves to become observers before becoming responders. Imagine watching a game of chess. The strongest player rarely moves quickly. They study, observe, think. They understand that one careless move can change the entire game. Life is remarkably similar. Every emotional reaction is a move. Every response creates consequences. The wise person does not rush. They understand that patience often wins battles that force never could. Another reason people lose control is because they mistake disagreement for disrespect. Someone disagrees with your opinion. Immediately you feel attacked. Someone chooses a different path in life. Immediately you feel judged. Someone refuses your advice. Immediately you become offended. The Stoics separated disagreement from personal identity. They understood something modern society often forgets. Another person's opinion is not an attack on your worth. It is simply another opinion. Imagine two people standing on opposite sides of a mountain. Each describes what they see. One sees a waterfall. The other sees a forest. Neither is necessarily wrong. They simply occupy different positions. Human conversations often work the same way. Different experiences produce different perspectives. Wisdom listens before deciding. Pride argues before understanding. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that every person acts according to what they believe to be true. That does not mean they are correct. It means they are human. Understanding this creates compassion. And compassion quietly dissolves many unnecessary conflicts before they ever begin. There is another invisible chain that keeps people reacting. The desperate need to be right. Think carefully about how much energy people spend trying to prove music themselves. Winning arguments, correcting strangers, defending every opinion, having the final word. But ask yourself this: how many of those victories' music actually improved your life? How many gave you lasting peace? The Stoics believed it is far better music to preserve your character than to win every debate. Sometimes you can win the argument music and lose your peace. Sometimes you can lose the argument and keep something far more valuable: your self-control. There was an old craftsman named Arthur who music restored antique clocks. One afternoon, a customer insisted Arthur had repaired the wrong clock. The accusation was completely false. Arthur listened quietly, checked the paperwork, and calmly showed the customer the evidence. When the customer realized his mistake, he apologized. Arthur accepted the apology with a smile. Later, his apprentice asked, "Weren't you angry?" Arthur looked at one of the clocks ticking peacefully on the wall. "If I had become angry, the clock would still have been right. But I would have been wrong." That simple answer carries enormous wisdom. Truth does not become stronger because you become louder. Truth remains true whether you shout or whisper. The Stoics understood this. That is why they valued calm confidence over emotional intensity. People who know who they are rarely feel the need to prove it constantly. Mountains do not announce their height. The ocean does not announce its depth. Music, the sun, does not announce its light. They simply exist. In the same way, genuine strength becomes obvious without demanding attention. And perhaps that is what makes emotionally disciplined people so powerful. Their confidence is not built upon winning every confrontation. It is built upon remaining themselves in every confrontation. When that happens, nobody can control you anymore because your peace no longer depends on their behavior. It depends on your own wisdom. The greatest victory in life is rarely visible. It is not the applause of a crowd. It is not proving someone wrong. It is not humiliating the person who tried to hurt you. The greatest victory happens quietly deep within your own mind. When you realize that another person's behavior no longer has permission to disturb your peace. That is the moment you become truly dangerous to manipulation, because manipulation only works when it finds an emotional door left open. Once that door is closed, control disappears. Marcus Aurelius understood that every morning he would encounter difficult people. He expected music selfishness. He expected arrogance. He expected dishonesty. Not because he was pessimistic, because he was realistic. By preparing his mind before facing the world, music refused to be surprised by human nature. Think about how much emotional energy people waste simply because they expect everyone to behave perfectly. Then they become devastated when someone lies. They become furious when someone is rude. They become shocked when someone betrays them. Music, the Stoics taught something profoundly practical. Expect human imperfection. Not so you become cynical, so you become prepared. Preparation protects peace. Surprise often destroys it. Imagine an experienced sailor preparing for a voyage. He knows storms may come. Because he expects music them, he strengthens the ship before leaving the harbor. When the waves finally arrive, he does not panic. He prepared for them long ago. Life works the same way. If you prepare your mind for criticism, disappointment, rejection, and misunderstanding, those experiences no longer shake you as deeply. They become challenges, not catastrophes. There was a firefighter named James who had spent over 20 years responding to emergencies. A young recruit music once asked him, "How do you stay calm when everyone else is panicking?" James answered without hesitation, "I don't wait until the emergency to practice being calm." That sentence contains extraordinary wisdom. Most people wait until conflict appears before trying to control themselves. The Stoics trained every day. They practiced patience before they needed patience. They practiced gratitude before hardship arrived. They practiced self-control before temptation appeared. They strengthened their minds during peaceful seasons so they would remain steady during difficult ones. That is why emotional discipline cannot be developed only during confrontation. It is built quietly through daily habits. Every time you choose patience over impulse, you become stronger. Every time you choose understanding over anger, you become wiser. Every time you choose silence instead of unnecessary argument, you become freer. These small victories accumulate. One day, someone who once knew exactly how to provoke you will try again. They will expect the same reaction, the same anger, the same frustration, the same emotional explosion. Instead, they will find calm, and that calm will confuse them. Not because you became cold, because you became disciplined. There is tremendous music power in becoming emotionally unpredictable. Not unpredictable through mood swings or inconsistency. Predictable in your values. Unpredictable in your reactions. People eventually realize they cannot push your buttons because those buttons no longer exist. The control they once enjoyed simply disappears. This does not mean people will stop criticizing you. It does not mean life suddenly becomes peaceful. Music, it means your inner world is no longer built upon external events. That is freedom. Imagine carrying a remote control everywhere you go. Every stranger you meet has the ability to press a music different button. One button creates anger. Another creates insecurity. Music another creates jealousy. Another creates fear. Now imagine taking that remote back. Nobody else can press those buttons anymore because you are holding the only controller. That is exactly what Stoicism teaches. Take ownership of your inner world. Do not leave it in someone else's hands. Seneca believed that the strongest person is the one who remains master of themselves regardless of circumstances. Not because circumstances become easy, because self-mastery becomes stronger than circumstance. That is the difference between temporary confidence and lasting confidence. Temporary confidence depends upon praise. Lasting confidence depends upon character. Temporary confidence disappears when criticized. Lasting confidence remains steady because it was never built upon approval in the first place. Ask yourself honestly, how many people have rented space inside your mind without paying anything? How many names immediately come to mind when you think about resentment? How many conversations continue stealing today's peace, even though they ended months or years ago? The Stoics would ask another question. Why are you still giving them that power? Every day you continue reacting to memories. Those memories continue controlling you. Every day you continue carrying old anger. That anger continues shaping your life. Freedom begins when you decide the past will no longer govern the present. That decision belongs to you. No one else can make it. And when you finally make it, something extraordinary happens. You stop waking up angry. You stop sleeping with resentment. You stop replaying every insult. You stop needing revenge. You stop chasing the last word. Music instead. You become the kind of person whose peace cannot be purchased, whose confidence cannot be shaken, whose character cannot be manipulated, and whose calm presence speaks louder than any argument ever could. That is the day nobody can control music you ever again. Not because you controlled them, but because you finally mastered music yourself. If today's lesson changed the way you see emotional strength, subscribe to Stoic Reflections and continue this journey toward wisdom, resilience, discipline, and inner peace. Remember this every single day. People can only control the emotions you refuse to control yourself. The day you stop reacting music without thinking is the day you truly become free.